Russia's told the United States to cut the number of diplomatic staff it has in the country by the 1st of September. It's a move that follows the approval of new anti-Russian sanctions by the Senate in Washington. We can go live to central Moscow now. Our correspondent Kate Partridge is across developments. Kate, hi again. The Russian Foreign Ministry is really not mincing its words, is it?
Hi there, Colin. No, they're not. I mean, let's look at the context of where this all started. And this actually began back in December when the US expelled some Russian diplomats and confiscated some diplomatic buildings, basically some compounds. Well, it's taken a while for Russia to respond. But as you said, the context now is in light of the new sanctions that have been voted by the Senate. And what's happened is that Russia has effectively responded in kind. It's saying that the same number of diplomatic staff, also technical staff, that they have in America must be responded in kind with the Americans across the whole of Russia. This is not just Moscow. So we're looking at, as you say, 455 people by the 1st of September. What they've also said is that they want to stop the Americans having access to certain warehouses and also what they call a diplomatic compound. Now, that's not an embassy or anything like that. It's effectively what they call a dacha, which is effectively a leisure complex out in the forest near the city. But what they're saying is that Russia is responding tit for tat for what America has done, and also will continue to do that if America unilaterally decides to cut back on diplomatic staff. But what they've also said, the Deputy Foreign Minister has said, is that they will go further. They will go beyond cutting diplomatic staff and also access as well, because they feel there's been what they call a rise of Russophobia on Capitol Hill. Now, the Russians feel that they've acted in a kind of normal way. They've tried to normalise bilateral relations between the two countries, despite the fact that sanctions have gone ahead. But they also feel it's time for these new measures in light of what they feel is a new, more aggressive American foreign policy, as we can hear.
These sanctions once again show how aggressive the US is in conducting its foreign policy. Using exceptionalism as an excuse, the US arrogantly ignores the interests of other countries.
Well, as we hear there, American exceptionalism, this is something that the Russians feel that it's something that they don't think is appropriate, and therefore they've taken this particular action.
OK, now we know exactly what the Foreign Ministry thinks. Anything from the key officials in the building behind you?
Well, yes, I mean, this has all come about, I mean, less than a day, as we said, over the fact that the Senate had voted on these new anti-Russian sanctions, and only needs Donald Trump's signature, really, to make it go ahead. But the feeling here, and particularly, as you say, in that building behind me, is that these new sanctions are actually punitive. They punish companies trying to do business with the Russians, particularly the energy companies. And that's not just American companies either. The ramifications are also global. Well, President Putin said that Russia had been patient for long enough, and he felt that it was about time that there would be a response, and that a response would become pretty soon.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr.
These sanctions are completely illegal. They go against international law and the rules of the World Trade Organization. We're being very patient and very reserved, but at some point we will have to respond. We can't endlessly tolerate aggressive behavior towards our country. These actions can be perceived as aggravation, and I would even say exceptional cynicism.
And there hasn't just been a response from the Kremlin either. We're looking at the US ambassador to Russia, John Tefft, who's also said that he feels a deep sense of disappointment over these new moves and has protested against them.
All right, Kate, for now in central Moscow, thanks very much for that. OK, now many still see President Trump as being in a tough position. Early days yet, of course. It only just turned 9 a.m. in Washington, and he's yet to make his decision. Either he must take a hard line on the Kremlin or let down his party and try and go against the will of Congress. We're going to get more live reaction now. Leonidas Chrysanthopoulos is with us, former Greek diplomat and ambassador. Welcome to the programme. The Russian president warned yesterday that there could be countermeasures. Do you think anyone in Washington would have expected them this quickly?
I think that they should have expected it because it is also to the credit of Russia that they waited so long to take these measures. They gave an opportunity to the new administration to ameliorate the relations between Washington and Moscow, in spite of the fact that there was a good meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin in Hamburg. We see that the administration and the Congress still insist on this hardline policy. By the way, it is totally illegal by international law, the confiscation of property that the Obama administration did in December, because the property also of the embassies, they also have diplomatic status, and they are covered by the Vienna Conventions on Diplomatic Relations. But also, I think that the U.S. administration should also look into Oliver Stone's Putin's interview, where Putin was very clear there on what his disposition was vis-à-vis the United States, vis-à-vis the Trump administration, and very correctly, I think, he condemned the administration and the bureaucrats of all countries for creating these problems. Another thing that the Congress measures create is that they create a rupture between the European Union and the United States, because the interests there are totally conflicting between the European Union and the United States. So the measures that Russia took today, they are according to diplomatic practice, and it's exactly a reply to the measures taken by the Obama administration. And I find them totally not logical to take more measures against Russia. For what?
Do you think Russia's move will have any bearing on what President Trump does in the coming hours?
I think it will. I think it will, but he cannot do many things, because this was adopted in Congress with only 3 negative votes. So even if he vetoes this act, it will still pass by Congress with I think the 2/3 majority. I mean, anyway, it's a lost case. The measures will be applied. And I don't think that Trump can do very many things there.
Okay, so in your expert opinion then, as a career diplomat, where's this going to take us in the future then on solving the big issues like Syria, for instance, where both the US and Russia were seemingly ending up on the same page? But now the diplomatic talk is increasingly angry between the pair of them. Where's that going to lead us?
Well, the problem today now is purely economical. I think that on the Syrian issue, it's not going to affect it very much, because Lavrov has very good contacts with his American counterpart. And they are working out, and what they have worked out until now has been effective. So I hope, but I don't think that it will affect the other issues. Of course, it's up to the Congress also to assume their responsibilities. I mean, they're treating the Russian Federation as if it was the Soviet Union, and they should understand that it is no longer the Soviet Union. This is what they have to put into their minds.
Some 21st century thinking's needed. Okay, for now, Leonidas Chrysanthopoulos, a former Greek ambassador, thank you very much for joining us on RT.